I have owned Aputure lights for the past probably 7 years, but I've never owned a bicolor Aputure light before in the COB format. I had tube lights, but only daylights with COBs. These are my 300Ds right here. And this here today is my first ever bicolor Aputure light. And it's not just bicolor, but it is also the BLAIR engine 400X, which is technically a bicolor light or adjustable white light, but it's also capable of certain colors, about 70% of Rec 709, and has full green and magenta controls. So yes, Aputure STORM 400X tunable white LED. So I ordered this on the 11th, and they actually overnighted it, which I was not expecting. And I was shooting on the 12th and the 13th in Myrtle Beach in Atlanta. So I didn't get a chance to actually use it right away because they delivered it when I wasn't home. But this is the 400X in its case. All right. So just looking at the case straight up, it is a little bit longer than I thought it would be, but it is not significantly bigger than a 300. So I'm going to line it up on this side. So it's about an inch longer, same exact width as the 300. So there's no difference there, but it is a little bit taller. So it is basically the same design, although this one is actual stitching on the old 300s, like actual stitching. This one is just painted on. And then the new case has this adjustable net on the top, which I believe they said it's for putting on light modifiers, like the Light Dome 3 Mini or the Light Dome 3, because they fold flat, so you should be able to like slide it in and then tie it down. I'm not entirely sure if that's something that I would be using it for. Now I gotta flip it around because it's gonna open up this way. So the business card window was on this end, and there's also one on this end. This one actually has a diagram, which is I haven't seen before, of how to pack everything back into the case. So it shows you where the cables go, where the reflectors go, where the control boxes go. I haven't seen this before. And there's also a business card slot on the top that says Storm 400X, although I usually just have my business card in there with my phone number as these things get mixed in. So it's sealed obviously with the Aputure QR coded tag, as pretty much every Aputure light. My AC turned on, so this might get a little bit noisier. So, okay, the zippers are different too. The old ones don't have this red pull tab, which is fabric, so it could be looped on. So that's not something that's a big deal. Okay, first notice, it doesn't have a strap to keep the lid from doing this. All the older cases had the strap so the lid would stop, and it also had a zippered pouch on the top, so you could put in like maybe an extension cord or something. Okay, Storm 400X. There's a foam piece here which is just sitting on top of the reflector, even though the reflector already has a padded piece and a foam. Now, most likely, I'm going to swap this around and do it upside down, because then it's easier to take it in and out, and it won't affect the use in any way. This reflector looks the same as a 300. The angle might be slightly different, but quality-wise and everything, it looks the same. This is the BM5635, so I'm assuming it's a 35-degree angle reflector. Here, there's also another piece of foam. These are probably not going to go back into the case. So top left is the control box, which is fairly similar to the 300 and all the other aperture lights. It's a baby version of the 1200X. So if you've ever seen a 1200X, this is exactly the same thing. It looks like they just like put it in Photoshop and then scale it down. Everything else seems to be matching. All the connectors are on the top, so now you can actually put this on the ground like this. You can't do that with the 300s because the cables are coming out of both ends, so you had to lay it down on its back, and it had some feet to do that. This one, you can put it down. There's a fan on the bottom, and there's a clear view across these vents, so there's a lot of airflow, it looks like. You've got your V-mount plates on both sides. There's a USB connector here, which is probably for firmware updates. And then you've got 4 connectors on the top. The AC in, the DMX in, DMX out, and the actual output for the light head, which is marked with red on here. Now, obviously, this light is IP65 rated, so you can use this in the rain. So every one of these connectors is covered with this rubber seal. So before you open it, it's sealed. Now, I'm not sure if this IP rating also applies for battery usage, because the V-mount plates are obviously exposed, and there's exposed pins on both sides. So I think it only applies to running it on AC. So let's pull out cables. So this is the AC cord, which looks fairly standard. It has the same PowerCon style plug, and this one is 6 meters long, which would be 15, 18 feet. I'm not entirely sure. And it feels like an Aputure cable. It is good quality. And then we've got the standard stand clamp, which probably didn't change. It has the same features as the one I use with the 300 series. And the plate, I mean, I can't tell without testing if this is the same size of a plate, so I don't know if they're cross-compatible. They look pretty much the same. At least the stand clamp and the mechanism to open it with the quick release it feels the same. So moving forward here is, okay, the actual ballast cable, and it looks like stickers, Aputure stickers in a pouch. So you've got this cable. This is the one that connects the light to the ballast, and one side is red and one side is black. And this one is 3 meters, so that would be 9 feet, about 9 feet, maybe 10. So let me check to see if the colors line up. So does that mean that the red goes into the red plug, and okay, no. So the black goes onto the red marked plug. The red just means that it goes to the lamp head. So that way you can know that the red side goes to the lamp and the black side is gonna go on the ballast, but there is no color matching. Like this one has the red cap, but you're plugging in a black plug. I would assume that you would plug in the red plug and the other one goes to the other side, but no. Now these plugs are also completely waterproof, so they are different plugs than previous Aputure lights. They're 5-pin just like before, but the old ones used to just use like basically XLR cables. These are completely weather sealed, and you can't extend it. In previous lights, you were able to technically extend the length between the ballast and the light if you plug 2 cables into each other. You cannot do this with these. This also applies obviously to the 1200X, because this light is basically a baby 1200X. So if you've ever used it or you've researched it and you know how that light is built and works, this is the same thing, just smaller. So this thing feels quality. The only thing that I don't like straight up is the use of glossy piano black plastic on the top. I'm not a fan of that in general ever. And this isn't an Aputure thing, it's any electronics, because if you know, those plastics, those shiny piano gloss plastics just collect scratches as soon as you look at it. So I wish that they wouldn't have used it. They're only using it on the top here where it says the inputs, DMX output. So it's not a massive piece, but overall, it's still, I guess, my only complaint. It looks like you can clean the fan, and it comes apart with the screw and the tab to open this bottom where the fan actually lives. Yeah, and I can see tons of cooling fins inside. So yes, here it says it's rated max power 500 watts. So it's a 400X, but it can probably pull up to 500 total. Okay, so this part is Velcroed on one side and you just flip it out. It has the cutout for the handle, which is the same as the 300X. And then you've got the actual light in here. Oh, okay. So this one covers the front element, which I've seen on the 600s before, and it looks like this is just shipping material. There's no way we're going to keep this in normal use. And the light fixture is out. And it's actually smaller than I thought it would be. So the yoke itself is huge. This yoke is huge. But that was expected because this one has the combo stand style pin, which means that you can use a normal C stand with a baby pin, or you can use a junior receiver on a combo stand. If you take the screw out, then it becomes a baby or the junior pin receiver. And normally there is storage, yes. So you can store the screw in the yoke if you're using it this way, which is mostly how I will use this light, because I'm either going to put it on my rolling combo stand or my standard digital babies. So the light itself is basically a 1200X shrink down. So it does kind of look like that they basically shrinked it down. And the bottom has a gigantic fan, and the top has a lot of cooling pipes, at least 3 layers of 2s. So they're pairs that are stacked. Actually, it's 4 layers of 2s. So it's 8 heat pipes spreading to gigantic fins coming from the front, and the fan is pushing through air. I don't really see any electronics in this side, so that's probably sealed up front because this is, as I said, waterproof. The yoke is pretty big and it is marked with an actual angle, so when you have it on a light stand, it will help you figure out the angle of your light. So if the yoke is vertical in a stand, 0 degrees means that the light is flat. So if you want to do 5, 10 degrees, or if you want to do 90 degrees to the ceiling, then it has marks for you to do that. Now this one does not have the automatic braking that the 1200X has, because the 1200X, being such a heavy light, when you loosen your lock, it will still not move. It won't fall. You have to actually apply pressure to rotate the light because it has built-in brakes into the yoke. This one does not. So as soon as I release it, this would, it free falls, like it goes wherever it wants. So if you have a big softbox on the front, it will tilt forward without, force. So the big upgrade is this ProLock mount, which I've been wanting for a long time because I didn't like how fiddly and wiggly the old Bowen mounts are on every light. It's not just Aputure, every light. So finally Aputure made the ProLock, which came out on the 1200X, and it's basically a PL mount that you would use on cameras, for Bowens mounts. So there's no pin, there's no clicking, there's no rotating of your actual modifier. You unlock the ProLock, which has two knobs, and you just pull. And when you pull, this is standard. For bicolor lights, they use red. Daylights, they use the white. This is just for shipping. So then you attach your modifier. Let's say we're going to attach the standard one right here. So you don't have to rotate or anything. It just stays in there, and you rotate the ProLock, and it's in. And it doesn't wiggle. There's no movement whatsoever. So when you unlock it, make sure you hold it, because if the light is facing forward, this thing would fall out. So I'm gonna put the cap back on. But yeah, the BLAIR engine is beautiful. You don't actually see any of the colors of the LEDs, even though it's built up from many different colors, as far as like with BLAIR is blue, lime, amber, indigo, and red. So you don't see those. It all looks like a normal LED when you look at it, like normal bicolors. It looks yellow. But in reality, it's a combination of a lot of different colors. So I've got the light, and now I'm going to grab a stand and put it on there. And we're going to plug it into DJI power right here to test. So this is one of my stands that I use the most, especially in corporate conferences, because it has relatively big wheels. I can put a counterweight on it so it does not trip over. And it's also a combo. So not only can I put in a junior to baby adapter if I have to, which I did for my 300Ds, right? But now I can just go direct to the 400 into the junior receiver. So if I lock this down, it won't move. Now if I want to be technically correct, I'm going to point it towards the front where the longest leg is. And now we got ourselves a rolling 400X right here. And just for testing purposes, I am going to install the standard reflector. So unlock the ProLock, pull the cap, plug in this, and it's done. So now we're going to attach the ballast, which I usually have attached pretty low to keep the center of gravity low on these moving stands. So I usually have it facing this way, forward where the light is. It's pretty much acting as a sandbag. So the handle is much nicer than before, because it actually feels like this is how you're supposed to carry it, and it's balanced in the middle. But it isn't really good for hanging it on screws anymore. So I'm going to attach this to the light stand here. We're going to plug in the light itself to the ballast, which has a really gigantic Aputure Velcro. Holy cow, this is way bigger than before. I do use those still, and I'm happy that they actually are still including them, but it's way bigger. So these locking cables have to be pushed down, and it clicks in, so red goes in there. And then we've got the black one for the other side. So I'm going to actually wrap this up a little bit, just because I don't want to unwind the whole cable if I don't have to. But let me see. This Velcro is a little sticky, which I know it's its job, but it's also very long, so you should be able to attach it no problem to the leg of the stands like this if you want to be very, very nice with your setups. So plugging this in, clicking in, very good. And I guess the only thing left is just plugging in the AC. And for this testing purposes, we're gonna run the DJI power. Okay, this one is still the rotating pin, and we've got AC power going from the DJI Power 1000, and it's plugged in. And the light is on. So the control box came alive immediately, and it is displaying 0%, which is good. Now, I do not like this, and I'm not sure if you guys can see this, but that just bothers my OCD. There's nothing wrong with the actual light. It just bothers my OCD that the cable, and I'm going to raise this up so you guys can see it. And hopefully you can actually see it. Okay, so you can see it. I just moved the camera a tiny bit. So here's the one thing that bothers my OCD already is this silicone thing, this red one, that is covering the output that goes to the light when you're not using it, right? It's flipping forward basically right in front of the screen. So if I'm looking down to the screen, I can already see that it's blocking my screen. I can't see it. I have to look because it's literally flipping right in front of it. So I really wish that these would go sideways instead of forward. And I'm not sure if that's an option because it looks like it is just tied down to the output. So that might be something that you can rotate because it looks like that is the seal for this plug, but it's 4 screws and it's square. So I should be able to rotate it sideways, which would be fantastic for it to be not flipping around right in front of the screen from this angle. So let me turn this on. So I'm gonna just, okay, so I'm gonna go up to 5600 Kelvin because it was on 32. And I just turned it on. Okay, so this is 3%. This right here is 3%. And I'm probably blowing out because it is ridiculously bright already. So no settings have been changed. It just turned it on. I changed the white balance from 3200 to 56 and I set it to 3%. And this is what it's doing. So it is lighting and it is, even at 3%, it feels super bright. And I feel like if I boost this up, it's gonna be super bright. So we're at 10, this is 10%, and it pulls about 50 watts based on the DJI power. So I'm just gonna go all the way up to 50. And this is 50%. And it is definitely outputting some heat even. Like as far as putting my hand here, I can feel the heat output coming from it. So let's just go up to 100. This is 100. And hopefully the iPhone is adjusting its thing. All right, let's continue. I had to step out for a client meeting, so I was out for an hour. So I left the light here to just run at 10% at 5600 Kelvin. And the fan is not running at 10% at all. And I can feel some warm air coming out the top. So the heatsink is definitely letting air rise. And the Ballast does have the fan running. I can hear a little bit of buzzing, but it's not crazy. And it's grabbing air from the bottom and it's pulling it out of the top right here in the middle. There's a whole vent. So what I want to do now is look at the menu to connect Sidus Bluetooth and connect it to the iPad. I'm not sure if there's a firmware update straight out of the box or not, but that's what I want to check. Okay, so the Storm 400 showed up. We're gonna hit setup. And we're gonna hit back. I'm pretty sure that these buttons, the main 4 buttons, are kind of like the controls that they had on the 600X Pro and similar lights. So there's menu, light mode, preset, and a back button, and then you got 1 dial. So menu shows you obviously the main menu items. Light mode lets you switch from CCT to basically color, which lets you change the hue and the CCT together, or separately actually, but with the intent of creating a saturated color. And this one actually shows up on like a color picker. And if you look, this light is a tunable light, but it can actually do a great amount of colors with pretty good intensity. So I set the saturation to 100 here, and I'm circling the hue all the way around the edges of the scope. And we're at 10% intensity at 5600 Kelvin white point. So I could change the white point to 3200. Well, actually it goes the same from 2500 to 10,000, but we're going to keep it at 5600. And then you can also do green magenta shift. And if I increase, this is 100%, and then I'm going to keep going around so you can see how intense. Like, look at this purple. Holy cow. This feels like my PT2C tubes. Like these. The Amaran tubes can do color like this. And this is not even a color light, which is kind of crazy. So, yeah, all the yellows, greens, and we're going to go into blues. Like teal first, and then we're going to go into blue. This looks fantastic. All right, so let's go back. There's XY, which is basically selecting color on the Rec 709, or like the color space. And then you've got a bunch of effects, and then it can do Sidus link effects through the app. So I'm going to go back to about 10%, and let's see if this connected. Yes. So, okay. So I can control it. I can control the color temperature. Very good. And this is green magenta. So I can go full magenta, and I can go full green. And this is 0. We're in linear mode. So what I want to look at is, if I click firmware upgrade, it says no firmware upgrade available. So this is probably the only firmware out for this right now, which is good. Okay, so all kinds of CTBs, you can do XY or HSIC plus, which is the color mode that we looked at earlier. So all controllable from the Sidus Link app, which is great. And the display shows a whole lot of details. So, I mean, CIE mode, not blackout mode. We're powered by AC in linear, and I'm not entirely sure what that means. There's one more icon on the screen that I don't really understand. Dimming curve is linear. Output mode, max output or constant output. Okay, that means that you can, because of the different color temperatures, there's an output difference level between like 3200 Kelvin, 5600, but you can set it to constant, which will limit it and keep it in one setting. And then you've got max output, which basically just gives you the maximum possible at the color temperature you selected. You can also select how much your batteries can draw on the V-mount from 10 amps to 20 amps. So there's 10, 12, 15, and 20, which limits the maximum power of the light, but it won't kill your batteries. So if you know your batteries are kind of weak or they can't sustain 20 amps, which a lot of them can't, by the way, then you can limit the power to 15, which will give you 75%
maximum light, 12 amps, which is 60%, and 10 amps, which is 50%. So if you don't want to kill the batteries and you don't want to stress them to overheat, just set this to a lower setting and you'll be fine. So white light standard, so there's CIE daylight and there's black body. Normally cameras are tuned for CIE, so the white balance that you select in your camera will be based on the CIE calculation, but you can change the mode to black body. There are a bunch of other videos out there that explain this way better than I can, so if that's something that's important to you, probably look at Gaffer and Gear's video and the one he's referencing in there, from Gaffer Studio. So fan mode, I'm currently running smart. You can set it to silent, which limits the light to 45 watts, so it's about 10%. And then medium should be enough if the temperature is around 35 degrees Celsius. And then high is used if the temperatures are around 40 Celsius or even higher. But if you leave it on smart, it will just do constant adjustments. If you're worried about noise and you want to make your room tone constant, then probably run it indoors on medium, because that way you can get a constant room tone pickup, and that does not limit the output. So technically you can run it at 100% on medium fans. If you do silent, which they don't have a low, they only have medium and high. There's no low setting, but silent setting. So silent limits, and there's also only other mode is DMX controlled, which I'm not gonna do, so DMX is pretty useless for me. Studio mode is the same thing as every other Aputure light. If you plug in AC power, if the studio mode is enabled, the light will come on at the same percentage that it was before. If you have it off, you have to push the power button. So if you're building this into like a studio where it's always on and you want to control it with like a light switch or something, then studio mode is cool. If you're on set all the time, I leave this off because I don't want to get flashed as soon as I plug the light in on a new location. So for me, this is off. And then we got screensaver, which either does an animation of the Aputure logo after a certain amount of time, or there's complete blackout, which means the screen just goes black. So whichever you want to do. I have this set, the default is 30 minutes Aputure logo, and I guess that's fine because I can always control the light with the app, and I can tell if it's on because the power button lights up green. So kind of like this, like the fixture has a light here that shows that it's on. And language, product info. Product info basically shows you firmware versions and stuff. And if you go into operating status, you can actually look at temperatures. So right now, my control box ambient is reported at 25C, which is 77 Fahrenheit. The control box MCU is at 35C, which is 95 Fahrenheit. The LED engine is 55C, 131 Fahrenheit, which is basically in the head. And so lamp ambient is 55, which is the same temperature pretty much because it's picked up by the fins. And then lamp MCU, which is the controlling piece in the lamp, is 58 C, 136. So this is actually cool that you can actually see this. Fixture runtime, 1 hour, because I left it all on the for 1 hour for my meeting for testing. So this one actually reports the fixture runtime, which I haven't seen on the previous lights that I owned. I'm sure maybe this is included in like the 600C Pro and the newer like 600X Pro 2 or something, but I'm sure it's standard on the 1200X and this and the Storms. So that's new, that's cool. There's error logs. I'm at 0, so it doesn't show anything, but that's actually cool that you can look it back. And then you've got serial numbers, update firmware, which you can do through the USB, and then factory reset, and then you're back. And that's pretty much all the settings. So now I'm gonna do some testing, and I'm gonna check to see if there's a firmware update through USB, because sometimes that happens. And then in the next video, I'm gonna start testing this with the actual soft boxes, because I did not get the Fresnel mount with the barn doors yet. Those were back ordered for about a month and a half. This I was able to get pretty early on. Even B&H doesn't have these. So I'm gonna wait for that. And I'm not usually a person who uses those, because if I have to do lighting that requires like an 8x8 or something, I don't have that, so there's usually a gaffer involved. And so I usually do soft boxes, either a Lantern 90 if I'm booming this in for like a podcast or like over 2 people or something, or just light domes. For conferences, I prefer the light dome mini, because I can put it on this same exact stand and it doesn't take up a lot of space. And I'll put it on 2B mounts, and I can roll this around in the conference center and just adjust it based on the ambient light. And that's exactly why I wanted a bicolor light for a long time, because I always had to borrow or rent one for conference gigs. And then if I do interviews or something, or TV show interviews, then basically light dome 3 with the grid on. But usually it's always pretty much the 2-stop fabric. I don't think I've ever changed up and put in the 1-stop fabric. So it's always 2-stop fabric and the grid. So that's gonna be probably living on this light most of the time. So far I like it. It's quiet. I didn't hear a single sound.